The quilt smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs, but beneath its soft folds, a secret waited. She pressed her fingers against the fabric and felt the sharp edges of paper, freshly damp, the ink still glistening. Mara, a young archivist returning to her grandmother's old farmhouse after years away, discovers the quilt tucked in the attic. The house feels hollow, the walls whispering memories she barely recalls. Outside, the wind tugs at the broken shutters, and inside, dust motes float like suspended time. The discovery of the letter sets her on a path of quiet unease, where past and present merge in shadows stitched with secrets. The stairs creaked beneath Mara's weight as she climbed, each step releasing a cloud of dust that floated in the fading sunlight. The attic smelled of cedar, old books, and something faintly sweet she could not place. Shadows stretched long and thin across the wooden beams, and sheets draped over forgotten furniture shifted slightly in the breeze. At the far corner, tucked behind a stack of yellowing boxes, she saw it, the quilt. It was folded carefully, edges frayed from time, but unlike everything else in the room, it seemed almost deliberate, preserved with quiet intent. As Mara unfolded it, the soft fabric yielded under her hands, revealing a folded piece of paper sewn into its folds. Her breath caught. The ink was still wet. She pressed her fingers against it, afraid to tear the fragile paper, yet desperate to know who had left it and why. Outside, a crow cawed, sharp and sudden, echoing through the empty house like a warning. The attic felt smaller, the shadows deeper. Who could have sewn this letter here, and why did it feel like it had been waiting just for her? Mara unfolded the paper carefully, letting it rest on her lap as the dim light from the attic window caught the edges. The handwriting was delicate, almost trembling, yet precise, a style she did not recognize, though it felt intimate. The words began like a confession, speaking of regrets and things left unsaid, promises broken long before she was born. But then the sentences stopped. The final line trailed off mid-thought, as though the writer had been interrupted or had feared the consequences of finishing it. Mara traced the ink with her fingertip, feeling the slight indentation of the pen against the paper. The quiet of the attic pressed against her ears, amplifying her heartbeat, the rustle of leaves outside, the creak of the old house settling. Her mind raced through possibilities. Who had written this? And why hide it inside a quilt that she had loved as a child? Each word felt like a thread pulling her deeper into a story she had never known existed. The unfinished letter seemed alive in her hands, waiting, almost pleading, for her to continue the search. Could someone still be watching her, guiding her through these revelations? Or had the letter been meant as a final, secret message from someone long gone?
Mara's fingers lingered on the quilt, following the seams like lines on a map. Some threads were faded, frayed with age, their colors muted by decades of sunlight and dust. Others were fresh, vibrant against the old fabric, as though stitched only days ago. The quilt felt alive beneath her hands, carrying fragments of voices, whispers of past laughter, and a faint trace of tears. Memories rose unbidden, summers spent under the warmth of her grandmother's kitchen window. A sudden, sharp recollection pierced her calm. Her grandmother once said, "Some stories are better left untold, Mara, or they will follow you." Now she wondered if this quilt had been keeping those stories, waiting for her to return. The attic seemed smaller, the shadows closer, and Mara felt the weight of unseen eyes. Every stitch, every fold, carried meaning, a secret embedded in fabric, waiting for her understanding. Could it be that this quilt was more than a keepsake, more than a relic? Could it be a messenger? What truth had been stitched into these threads, and would she be brave enough to uncover it? Mara moved closer to the attic window, the quilt draped over her lap, and peered out at the overgrown garden below. The branches swayed in the late afternoon wind, casting long, shifting shadows that seemed almost human in shape. She caught her own reflection in the glass, pale, wide-eyed, and uncertain. For a moment, she thought she saw movement behind her reflection, a flicker of a figure standing just beyond the attic door. She blinked, and it vanished, leaving only the whisper of the wind and the soft creak of the old house. The quilt felt heavier now, as if urging her to pay closer attention, to read between the folds and seams. The names stitched along the edges of the quilt caught her eye, faint and almost hidden, like ghosts pressed into the fabric. Each one seemed to pull her back into a story she could not yet understand. Could the quilt be a map of her family's hidden past? Or was it a warning that someone was still watching? What secrets lay just beyond the glass, in the shadows, in the stitches, or in her own memory? The sky darkened suddenly, clouds rolling in with a low, distant rumble of thunder. Rain began to tap against the attic window, soft at first, then harder, drumming a rhythm that seemed urgent. Mara spread the quilt across the floor, careful not to let it touch the wet patches forming on the worn boards. The letters, once crisp and distinct, began to blur slightly at the edges where a stray drop had landed. She leaned closer, trying to decipher the words through the smear of ink. Each sentence felt like it carried weight, like a pulse from someone speaking directly to her. The storm outside mirrored the unrest growing inside her, pressing her to act, to uncover the story. Lightning flashed, illuminating the attic in stark, white clarity, and for a moment, Mara saw the quilt differently. Would the rain destroy the message before she could fully read it, or was it washing away layers meant to be revealed only now? Mara traced her fingers along the edges of the quilt, discovering tiny names stitched in almost invisible thread. Each name was a whisper from the past, faint and deliberate, curling into the folds like secrets pressed into the fabric. Her heart quickened. Some names she recognized, cousins and relatives she had only heard of in passing. Others were strangers, unfamiliar yet oddly intimate. The attic seemed to lean closer around her. She remembered her grandmother's hushed stories of family tragedies and disappearances, fragments that never made sense until now. Each name felt like a thread pulling her deeper, weaving a tapestry of hidden lives, of love, betrayal, and loss. Mara realized the quilt was more than a keepsake, it was a record, stitched by someone who wanted her to see, to understand. But as her fingers lingered over a particularly fresh thread, she felt a shiver, as if unseen eyes had just shifted behind her. Mara's eyes caught the faint outline of a small drawer set into the floorboards, almost invisible beneath layers of dust. Kneeling, she ran her fingers over the carved edges, feeling a subtle groove where the key might have once fit. Her pulse quickened, something about the quilt, the names, and now this hidden drawer made the air feel charged. With a soft click, the drawer opened. Inside were more letters, some yellowed and brittle with age, others startlingly fresh. Each was written in a similar delicate hand, the same style as the letter stitched into the quilt. Mara unfolded one carefully, her eyes scanning lines that spoke of lost love, secrecy, and choices that had haunted generations. The letters spanned decades, yet a few were dated just last week, impossible and inexplicable. Her hands trembled slightly as she realized someone had been chronicling the family's hidden stories continuously. The attic felt smaller, the shadows longer, as if the walls themselves were leaning in, urging her to read every word. Who had been leaving these letters? And why had they waited so long, or perhaps, why had they waited just for her? Mara froze as she heard faint footsteps drifting from the hallway below. The sound was soft, tentative, but unmistakable against the low hum of the storm that had finally subsided. Her heart thudded in the quiet attic, the quilt clutched tightly in her lap as if it could shield her from unseen eyes. She turned slowly toward the door, noticing how the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally along the walls. The air was thick, heavy with anticipation, and the faint scent of cedar and lavender lingered, mingling with something new, almost metallic, like ink or fresh paper. Mara realized the quilt's presence had transformed the room. It was no longer just fabric, but a conduit between past and present, secrets and revelation. The thought struck her sharply, someone might still be here, watching her, guiding her through this labyrinth of letters and memories. Every creak of the floor, every sigh of the old house, felt deliberate, as if the walls themselves were urging her onward. Was the house merely old and alive with memory, or was someone truly following her, waiting for her to uncover what had been hidden for so long? Mara unfolded the last letter from the drawer, her fingers trembling slightly. Its edges were crisp, the ink impossibly fresh, dated only yesterday. She read the words slowly, each one landing like a stone in her chest, a confession revealing truths long buried, secrets of love, betrayal, and choices that had shaped her family in silence. The voice behind the words was unmistakable, tender yet sorrowful, speaking directly to her across the years. Her breath caught as she recognized the handwriting. It was her grandmother's, though she had been gone for many years. How could it be possible? The words detailed actions and regrets that had never been spoken aloud. Mara felt tears sting her eyes as the gravity of the revelation settled over her, a mixture of grief, relief, and wonder. For a long moment, the attic was silent except for her own heartbeat. The letters, stitched and hidden in the quilt, had led her here, delivering the final piece of a puzzle she never knew existed. Could these confessions finally bring her peace, or was she only beginning to understand the weight of the truths that had been waiting for her all along? Mara spread the quilt across the attic floor, laying each patch flat as if unveiling a hidden tapestry. She ran her fingers over the seams and letters, tracing names, dates, and confessions stitched into the fabric. Each thread felt alive, connecting her to generations she had never truly known. The quilt was no longer just a relic, it had become a map of her family's hidden history, a vessel carrying voices from the past. The light from the attic window shifted as the afternoon waned, illuminating the folds of the quilt in a soft, golden glow. Mara felt a strange peace settle over her, mingled with the weight of revelation. She understood now that the letters and stitches were not only messages but also lessons about forgiveness, memory, and the resilience of those who came before her. As she folded the quilt carefully, Mara sensed a responsibility settle on her shoulders. The stories could not remain buried, they were hers to carry, to remember, and perhaps, to share. Would she be able to honor these truths, or would the weight of the past prove too heavy to bear? Mara sat quietly on the attic floor, the quilt folded around her shoulders like a fragile armor. Each letter, each name stitched into the fabric, now formed a complete tapestry of her family's hidden lives. A story of love, mistakes, and enduring hope. She pressed her hand to the final corner, feeling a small, deliberate stitch that seemed almost like a heartbeat. The room was still, bathed in the soft light of evening filtering through the cracked window. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, and for the first time since she arrived, the house felt at peace. Mara traced the final message embedded in the quilt, a gentle call to remember, to forgive, and to carry the family story forward. Her heart ached and swelled at once, a mixture of grief and quiet joy. As she rose to leave the attic, she realized the quilt was no longer just fabric or letters, it was a living memory. A bridge between past and present, stitched with intention and love. Mara whispered, almost to herself, was this truly the end of the mystery, or the beginning of a new chapter in a story that would continue through her? And in that soft, lingering silence, the attic seemed to answer with a gentle certainty, some stories are never truly finished, they are only passed on.